So, living at, what was it, 45?
226 East Jackson.
226 East Jackson. Now, where did you sleep?
When I was little, probably up in the attic. And we used to, well, first, when I was real little, we slept in the bedroom next to the bathroom, but we would sleep like 3 across the bed sideways, you know, not lengthwise. Maybe it was 3 or 4 of us in the bed. I remember that. And then later on, slept in the attic. My dad fixed the attic over and slept up there for years.
But,
yeah, I remember that vividly.
What would you do for recreation?
Go in the stripping holes, out, you know, where all the coal banks were. And we'd be jumping in the strip, climbing up the stripping hole. Oh, geez, we could have been killed, you know, but that's what we used to do. We'd be straight up. And we'd climb up those till we get to the top, you know, and then we'd roll rocks down or roll tires down. We just had fun. And picked coal and stuff like that. You know.
And you probably did huckleberry picking?
Oh, yeah, huckleberries I remember vividly, you know. And we did that, you know, good part of the summer. And then my mom and dad would use the money that we would sell them. At that time, people would buy them, like a little market would buy them, and then they would ship them to New Jersey or Philadelphia. And we'd pick all day. And that would, my mom and dad would get enough money at the end of the summer, like get your clothes and shoes for school. You know, parents really worked hard. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, so you were the youngest boy.
Youngest, yes. I had 4 younger sisters then, too. Okay.
So yeah, you were the last boy born, and then the 4 sisters were born after you.
Correct. Mary, Sylvia, Julie, and Vicky, in that order.
You had mentioned earlier you had memories of your mom.
Oh yeah.
I never had the privilege to meet your mom, my grandmother.
She was gone long before you.
She died in '62, I think.
1962.
And I came along May of '63, so you know.
Yeah, you never knew her.
But what can you tell me about your mom?
Oh, she was just. I remember to this day her baking bread just about every day, and we had a coal stove. She baked bread in a coal stove, and I remember her rolling out dough and, you know, like flattening it out, and then we had a clothesline in the kitchen, just a, you know, a rope clothesline, and she would put towels on a clothesline, and she'd put this dough over that, make noodles, and then cut it up for noodles and make, you know, cabbage and noodles and stuff like that for excuse me. And you know, all the stuff. I mean, she's just worked hard. She'd be up early. I mean, she'd be up probably 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. See my dad off to work. He used to walk to work. He'd walk probably 2-3 miles to work. But you know, probably my fondest memory of my mom, and I often said this: if I could live one day over, I would like to live one day over, remembering her that we used to pick the huckleberries, and you know, we'd be out there all day, and we have to walk, carry his bucket up a hill to get up to the car. You know, my dad would pick us up when he would come home from work, and I remember we used to get 2 buckets of huckleberries. My mom would be carrying 2 buckets, and probably my brothers and my sisters would also be carrying berries. And I remember walking up, and I'd look back and see her, you know, and she would be struggling with them. They were heavy. You're going uphill. And I remember running up to the car with my buckets so I could turn around and go down and take the buckets from her and carry them. And I just remember that like it was yesterday. And if I could live one day over, I would like to live that day over. Just to see the look on her face of relief, you know, and so happy she was that I went down to help her, you know. So that's a very special memory.
Wow. How about well, did you ever get in trouble? You know, Militskys are famous for antics and things.
Yes, your dad was probably the most notorious.
I don't know if that ever happened to you.
I don't remember too much about really ever getting in any real trouble, you know, because they were older than me and they kind of took care of me, you know, watched over me, you know. So, but I got them in trouble.
Oh, really? What?
Well, we would, even in the wintertime, this was a winter day, I remember Stan and Frank and Joe and maybe Carly was along. We used to go for walks out in the cold mine, even in the wintertime. And it was cold, you know, freezing cold, you know, colder than Macadam.
Yeah.
And I remember my feet got all wet, you know, because I don't even know if we even had boots on or not, and my pants were all soaking wet, and it was freezing, you know. And we came back and to the house, and of course my brothers were older than me. They were tough. But I remember my mom saying, "What happened to you?" I said, "Well, I said, I remember these where they dragged me out on the cold banks." Okay. So she kind of paddled them a little bit, you know. So they got in trouble, not me. But I remember that. It's another memory, you know, that's pretty vivid.
And any memories of Grandpa?
Oh, my dad? Oh, yeah. Probably the most outstanding one was, well, he was retired already. He worked till he was 74, but he might have been maybe 80 years old. And I remember taking him in the car, and we went out to Jetto. Jetto was a little town outside of Hazelton. And then there was, walked over to this big stripping hole, and I knew there was this big, they call it a dragline shovel, which was like a big boom with a shovel that would, you know, the big cable suspended, and they would just drag. The overburden.
Drag line shovel.
Right.
Okay.
And they would take all the overburden off the top where the coal was, and then they would get to the coal, and they would dig it out. And I remember walking over to the end of that stripping hole with him, and you know, he was already getting elderly, and we walked over it, and he saw that shovel. And I remember him saying, "That's the Anthracite King," and that was the name, that's what they called it. And probably 20 years before that, he helped build it.
Really?
In another location, and he recognized it, and he's just got this big smile on his face, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Another one of those special moments.
Oh, yeah,
yeah. The Anthracite King, he called it. So.
Jeez.
Then we turned around and went back in the car, you know, I took him home. So.
He had quite a work ethic.
Oh, yeah. Well, you remember him, probably.
Yeah, I mean, he would work. Do you remember like when he would go, when he would come back from work?
Well, usually he would work probably 10, 12 hours, but sometimes he would have to go to work. Well, he did. He worked swing shifts, so sometimes he would be leaving 10 o'clock at night to go start to work at 11 at night and work until 7 in the morning. And that was like in the winter time, I remember. And then again, he would walk through the stripping holes at night.
Jeez.
And he made these, never forget this, it used to be sleet and freezing rain in McAdoo, and it's hard enough walking through those stripping holes in the summer, but at the winter time, he made these metal things out of like screening from the coal breakers. He would bend them a certain way, and they would be like barbed. And then he would make ties for them, and he would tie them on the bottom of his shoes so that they wouldn't slip.
Well, you know, what's one thing I noticed about him, he had a lot of ingenuity. I mean, he was kind of an inventor.
He was clever.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember the gate had like a weight on it with the chain and a pulley, and just so it would always shut behind you.
Right.
And I mean, he was always.
And that was a sash weight from a window. That's what it was. You know, but the old style windows, they didn't go by it. They had sash weights, rope, and they would slide up and down. That's how the windows would stay up. But he would use one of them for that gate. Yeah, I remember that pulley on there.
Jeez. Well, yeah, I mean, he would. I mean. You know, he's thought of, you know, as, you know, well, he worked in the coal mines or in the coal breaker all his years, but I mean, he had a lot of skills.
He did.
You know, that
he was clever.
Yeah.
And I think they passed some of those genes on to us. Because we all kind of like to work hard. Well, your dad, you know, he works all the time. Well, your dad had that work ethic. Look at his. You know, he's what, 72 or
73.
73, and he's still going. You know.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, and Grandpa worked till what, 77?
74, I think we finally talked. And the only reason that we were able to talk him into work, because we were afraid he was going to get killed on one of those slip and get run over by one of those coal cars. But I remember when he was 80 years old, about the same time period, I remember when I used to go visit him, and he'd be having breakfast. I'd make eggs for him in the breakfast.
I was there one morning, I remember.
Yeah, and he said to me one time, he says, "What I would give to go back to work." At 80.
Really?
Yeah, he missed being needed, and he missed his friends. You know, of course, most of them were dead.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember that good work ethic.
Shit.
Yeah. And so that's what's like disheartening when I hear these people say they can't wait till they retire and they're going to do nothing. Because what a waste. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it's memories of my dad and my mom.
Now, how did you ever? Now, what musical instruments did you play? Just the bass?
To music?
Yeah,
Well, actually,
instruments.
it's kind of another story too. I took accordion lessons like Carl did. You know, when I was a kid, I
Okay.
played accordion. And when I was in high school, probably maybe 11th grade, there was one of my classmates, Freddie Ossifer, his name is. In fact, he passed away a while ago. He had a guitar. And he played guitar well, you know, and he said to me one day, he said, "Why don't we see if we could form a band?" And I brought my accordion, and you know, we played a couple things, but it just didn't.
Well, let me even go back. How did you get an accordion? Did you have to?
Mainly because Carl did it, and I guess it was my parents said, you know, if you want to play, we'll pay for the lessons. And well, why not? You know, so I was young. You know.
I mean, so your parents bought it for you, or
they bought it? Yeah.
Wow, it must have been
I
expensive.
don't remember how. Yeah, they weren't cheap.
Yeah.
And so that's how I learned the basic musical thing.
And so you got one, and Carl had his
Carl
too.
had his years. Carl's 10 years older than me, so Carl had it long time.
Right, okay.
And then he encouraged me too. Well, I'm playing glad he did, you know. And so we got together with this, trying to form this band, and I was playing accordion, he was playing guitar, and it just didn't quite sound right, you know. He said to me, he said, "I know this guy that has a bass." He says, "You want to try to learn how to play bass? This guy wants to sell it." And I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a try." So I forget, maybe I paid $100 for it, you know. And I still have it to this day. In fact, it's worth a lot of money now because it's like a vintage bass.
Oh yeah.
Bass is Fender bass. And then I started. I really learned on my own by listening to music and other bass players, and because I had the basic knowledge from the accordion.
Did you have like an ear for music as far as tuning and stuff like that?
Pretty much, yeah. And that's how I picked it up. And then I started playing with. We had the band, and it was called Freddie and the Redcoats. I'll never forget that we had red coats with black collars on, you know. And we played quite a few jobs, you know. And we had fun. And then I got with some jazz groups and then went on from there. I played a lot of jobs over the years, and those were the good years when there was a lot of bands playing. But like today, there are not too many playing jobs around anymore. Because, you know, two reasons: DUI, and sort of like the bars don't, you know, make a lot of money selling booze anymore. And number two, you got DJs. That pretty much put the kibosh to bands. That's pretty much it. I remember, you know, going fishing in McAdoo. That was another thing. You know, you get up 4 o'clock in the morning and walk, you know, several miles with your friends and go fishing in a trout stream, you know, and then see the sun coming up. So those are good memories.
Yeah, like a regular conventional
like
fishing rod?
Spinning reel. Spinning rod, yeah.
Put like a worm on the end of it as bait, stuff like that.
You didn't catch much, you know. You might catch a 6-inch trout or something like that, but we had fun. You know.
And did you go in the military too?
No. Most of my brothers did, but I didn't. I went to Penn State for engineering, and when I got out of school, the Vietnam War was on heavy. And I went to work for Bendix, which was a military contract. Like they built aircraft instruments. They had. You got to be firm it because you're in a critical area. The war was on.
Right.
So fortunately, I didn't go get my head blown off. You know? I was lucky.
Yeah. Wow.
So, a lot of my good friends died over there.
Wow.
I was fortunate. So that was it. And that's how I ended up in Tunkhannock. Because Bendix was up in that neck of the woods.
Well, and then, at that time, though, you were raising chickens or something.
Well, yeah, when my daughters were young, when they were little kids, we had chickens.
Now, you're in engineering, how did you get into raising chickens?
Well, one day, kids, you know, they like little peeps and stuff like that. And one day I brought home about a dozen chickens, and they went crazy. So I just built a coop for them. And those chickens, we couldn't kill them. I mean, my God, that would be like murder, you know.
Right.
But those chickens lived 11, 12. In fact, the last one was 12 hens and a rooster. And a rooster outlived all the hens. Like over a period, you know, like the bell curve.
Yeah.
Maybe once A year you would lose one or maybe two another year, and then toward the end you would lose more. The rooster outlived them all, and he was the last one. But they were a lot of work because you had it every day, 7 days a week. You know, so anytime you wanted to go somewhere for a weekend or something, you had to try to find somebody that was going to feed them, let them out in the morning, put them in at night, you know, stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's how we ended up with them. The kids, they had a ball.
And then you got to sell the eggs and stuff? Did you?
No, we just had a dozen of them. We're just for ourselves.
Because I can remember being over there. And when you had the chickens, and I remember clipping the beaks off babies.
Oh yeah. So that if they would peck, they wouldn't hurt each other. You know what I mean?
So they had baby chicks then.
No, we never had. We only had the babies when they were original, but we never had any offspring from them.
Oh, then okay. Then I saw them when they were
babies.
They were
and
chicks.
the reason the beaks are cut off so that they don't peck each other. You know, peck each other's eyes out or peck each other's feathers off. Because they will do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there'd be like little flattened spots on their beaks.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that's what we had done then.
Do you remember your dad bringing home live chickens?
Oh, I remember my dad.
My dad was telling me some stories that he had to go in the back.
He'd have a chopping block there, and, you know, for Sunday dinner, you'd have a chicken. You'd have to cut his head off. And I'll never forget that one story he would always tell. Your dad probably told me. He had this one chicken's head on a block, and he always said that chicken looked up at him with such a sad look on his face, and he picked that one out because it wasn't laying eggs. He figured, well, we may as well chop your head off and have it for dinner, you know. And that chicken looked up at him. He says, I was ready to chop it. He said, and looked up at me again with such a sad look. He says, I couldn't kill her. He just put her back in the pen. She started laying eggs again.
Really?
She must have got the message.
Oh, I never heard that story.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But I remember him telling me that story, and he'd be laughing while he would tell us. I just couldn't kill her, he said. She was so sad looking. Well, my dad had a good heart, you know.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, you'd have to just kind of close your eyes and chop them off, you know, so that it wouldn't bother you. Like, I could never do it, you know.
Well, what my dad told me is, you know, when he would go to behead one of them to cook it up, then my dad would say, Dad, let them run around the yard.
Oh, they would. But see, the problem with letting them run like that, they get bruised up and then they get like the blackish, you know.
Right.
You don't want to do that. You really want them to stay still.
And my dad was saying that your mom didn't like him to do that.
Right.
And so, but he would do it for the kids. And then she'd come out and he would say, oh, he got away from me. I couldn't control him.
Well, he was a figure, you know. I remember that, geez, for Sunday dinner, that's what you would have. But I remember the fresh eggs. I remember my mom's baking was all. She was a great baker, you know.
Did your mom and dad both, now was your mom Polish too?
Oh, yeah. Both mom and dad.
Yekno.
Yeah.
And did they speak Polish a lot around the house?
Yeah, when they didn't want you to know what they were talking about. You know, they would talk about you, you know. All of us, you know, they'd be talking in English, all of a sudden they switch over to Polish, then you know, they're talking about us. You know. So, yeah, I remember that vividly. I mean, those were great days.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So that's, I guess, pretty much
those are the highlights, huh?
Those are the highlights, yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
Back it was a great place back then, but it's changed so much now.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Klein's is still open.
Yeah. In fact, I know the guy that bought that.
I interviewed him the same way I'm interviewing you. I stopped in there, so I ended up...
Did you?
I ended up having my camera.
Plotkin? He's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's a musician.
Is he?
He plays piano, and he sings doo-wop stuff, like the old 1960s doo-wop.
Okay.
And occasionally I play with them when we do a concert, you know.
Okay.
Oh, Dick Plotkin, so you met him.
Yeah. I'm assuming this was November of '08, and he was the guy running the place.
Yeah, kind of like a blackish, curly-ish hair. Plotkin.
They're a heck of a nice guy.
Yeah, you like that. So you stopped to see him, huh?
Yeah, I just stopped in and took pictures, and then I just a little interview. He told me a little about the history of the store, you know. And
oh yeah, that goes way back.
Oh yeah.
Frank Klein.
Yeah.
My dad used to love that place. I'm surprised that he still has it open. He has another store in Scranton.
Oh.
where he sells like those kind of shoes. You know,
Yeah,
work shoes, right?
well, and the mining is still going on, so apparently he's keeping him in business, I would guess.
Yeah, I don't think he's making any money. He might be breaking even there, you know, but he keeps it open.
Now it's called Klein's also, the one in
I
Scranton?
think he keeps the name, yeah.
Yeah.
Frank Klein's.
Jeez.
Yeah, in fact, I have to stop in and see him. I haven't been able to stop and see him because I told him I'd stop, see him one day, you know. Yeah, and it's some memories. But like Hazelton is so different now, too. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh my God, it's like not like it used to be. You know?
Yeah.
But you remember Mackinac when you were little?
Oh, yeah, that was a big, we'd always make the trip over from Hazel Village, you know, and sleep over.
Well, did you used to go out in the coal banks at all?
A few times, yeah.
Because even right behind your what do you call your other grandparents? They had you were close to the coal banks, out their back door, right?
Yeah. And well, one time my dad took us out, I guess, in the areas where you guys would go maybe mushroom picking.
Yeah.
And I remember one time he saw a birch tree, so he broke off a twig and was chewing on the birch. I don't know.
The birch bark. Like,
birch bark,
right,
yeah.
You chew it off underneath, like
Yeah. I mean, stuff like that, you know.
Did he ever show you Johnny leaves? They called
Johnny leaves? No. What's it?
Yeah, they were like shiny leaves that used to grow almost like vines, I guess. And we used to eat them. But they would ask your dad about Johnny leaves. Yeah, I'll tell you. We used to eat them. You know, probably could have died from them. But that's why they got the name Johnny leaves. I have no idea. But ask him about Johnny.
Well, I'm going to try to do this with Uncle Carl and Uncle.
How are you?
And try to. I mean, I've already done my dad, and you're number 2, so
you did your dad already.
I got 5 hours.
Really?
5 hours.
Oh my God, he must have had some real good ones to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, and I kept his own personal story all the way up through Pratt.
Did he tell you about the time when he jumped out of the window in the high school?
I think he did.
Yeah.
Were you there?
No, I was. He was ahead of me, quite a few years. But
like right in the middle of his class.
Yeah, they opened the window and they jumped out. Right out the window, they went, Yeah.
I'll have to ask. I can't remember. I may have.
He must have told you that story.
I'm gonna have to write that one down.
Yeah, ask him about the high school window when he went out with a couple other guys. In fact, one of the guys he went out with, his name was Frank Kula. He was a big basketball player. He was like over 6 feet. Back then, it was big. And he was one of the guys that jumped out with him. Well, he just died a couple months ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, he'd ask him about that, jumping out the window in the high school.
Oh, jeez. So Johnny leaves and jumping out the window. That'll be next.
Well, remember your name, John. So you can't forget that with Johnny leaves.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, well, it was fun.